The wildlife of Spike Rhiando, racing, fiberglass, and the flying banana. Meet Spike Rhiando, possibly Canadian, allegedly born to circus acrobats, and definitely the kind of man who'd ride a scooter to Cape Town just to see if it worked. This is the story of a racing pioneer, fiberglass fanatic, and walking identity crisis. Buckle up, because it's going to get weird.
Before we get started, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. It really helps the algo find and share our message. If you'd like to keep up to date with everything light and fast, be sure to hit that subscribe button. It's free, so you'll get to stay up to date with all our videos, live streams, shop tours, and documentaries. Now back to the video.
Who was Alvin Spike Rhiando? Well, that depends on who you ask. Canadian? Sure. American? Why not? Mexican? Possibly. On Tuesdays, Spike claimed to have been born in Saskatchewan, which we think is a real place, but also in Berlin to a German mother and a juggler father named Rebla. Yes, Rebla. Because why not reverse your name if you're already juggling facts for a living? He even claimed he was supposed to be on the Lusitania when it sank in 1915. Supposed to be, as in the Titanic's hipster cousin. In 1933, Spike moved to the UK with a bold dream: to introduce American-style midget racing to the genteel motorbike-loving British. His plan? Tear around dusty cinder tracks like a caffeinated wasp in a biscuit tin. It didn't quite catch on. Still, the press loved him, branding him the American dirt track ace, which sounds thrilling until you realize no one could verify he'd ever raced in America, or on dirt, or was an ace of anything except self-promotion. During World War II, Spike reportedly worked for Caterpillar in the UK. Then came the British government's most expensive bad idea, the Tanganyika groundnut scheme, launched in the aftermath of World War II in 1946 by the Labour Party administration of Prime Minister Clement Attlee. Spike saw an opportunity and headed to Africa to help dig up peanuts for empire. The scheme collapsed in spectacular bureaucratic style, but Spike returned home 2 years later with a wallet fat enough to start dreaming big. Spike was among the first to jump into the new 500cc formula. He bought a Cooper Mark II and, because subtlety was for other people, added gold lacquer and enough chrome to blind a squadron of Spitfire pilots. Autosport's Gregor Grant dubbed it the Flying Banana. And then, at Silverstone in 1948, Spike did the unthinkable. He won the British Grand Prix support race. Admittedly, the race started with just 2 drivers ready and Sterling Moss forgetting his drivetrain, but a win's a win. Never content, Spike set his sights on something even more ambitious, a monocoque chassis. That's right, years before Lotus made it cool. He commissioned the Trimax, a sleek machine supposedly wind tunnel tested, though said wind tunnel may have been his garden shed during a stiff breeze. Sadly, the Trimax didn't like gearboxes, and its debut at Goodwood ended early. After one modest success at Brands Hatch, Spike sold the car and moved on, leaving monocoques to future geniuses. Spike's next obsession? Fiberglass. Specifically, Fibreglass Scooters. With the help of Cooper mechanic Don Palmer, he built a lightweight 2-stroke scooter and immediately asked himself the most Spike question imaginable. Can I ride it to Cape Town? Answer, sort of. He got as far as the Sahara before collapsing under a rock like a lizard in siesta. Rescued by the French Foreign Legion, he was sunburned but not broken. And the scooter? Still possibly somewhere out there, serving as a scratching post for camels or something like that. Back in Europe, and now broke, Spike was approached by a couple of wealthy Americans who apparently thought fiberglass could save the car industry. Ireland, a land of rolling hills, strong tea, and world-class storytelling. But in the 1950s, one tale got a little overinflated. In 1959, 2 American entrepreneurs, James F. Conway and William K. Curtis, had an idea. Let's build a luxury car in Ireland and sell it to Americans, because when you think luxury motoring, you naturally think of County Monaghan. The result? The Shamrock, an Irish-American Frankenstein's monster of a car, built on an Austin A55 drivetrain and modelled loosely on a bar of soap-wearing fins. It was billed as Ireland's answer to Detroit, but when Detroit answered, it just laughed. The production scheme for the Shamrock was envisioned to be up to 10,000 cars a year, but as few as 10 complete cars were made during the 6 months before production ceased. After the factory closed, the unused parts were dumped into a local lake. Few Shamrocks were built, and even fewer still exist, proving that luck, like style, elegance, and handling, was in short supply. And then, Spike vanished. Sort of. Some say he died in Ireland. Others claim he passed away in London in 1975. A few romantics believe he's still out there, hiding under a rock in the Sahara. Wherever he ended up, Spike Rhiando left behind a trail of glitter, grease, and utter confusion. Whether he was a racing ace, a Maverick engineer, or just the world's greatest storyteller, one thing's for certain. He definitely was the funny bone of epic car stories.